Welcome to Conversations with Educators, where we bring educators from across the country to talk about topics like college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, and more. Let's get started. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. We love our May webinar because we feel like most of you on the call, if the light at the end of the tunnel is not there already, it's very, very close. This is a great week because next week I know we're all looking forward to Memorial Day and Monday being off. So lots of things to celebrate right now, but of course, as we are wrapping up this year, everyone can't really help but just start thinking about next year already. I've been already typing 26, 27 a lot in my emails and thinking that August and everything will be here before you know it. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. The years just go faster and faster. So we wanted to just bring you a webinar to start thinking ahead. My name is Laura Miller. I'm always terrible introducing myself first. I'm joined by Max Gregory on our team. And here in a second, I'm going to tell you who our wonderful guest speakers are. But today, we're going to focus on getting things again ready for next year. We're going to talk about accommodations, communication, and how to create consistent processes. And we are so fortunate to be joined by two amazing district assessment coordinators in the state of Texas. We have Kelly from Pflugerville ISD and Katie from Humble ISD. If you're not in Texas, Pflugerville is in the Austin area. Humble is in the Houston area. Fairly sizable districts that manage a lot of people and processes. And we really just couldn't be blessed enough to have them with us today. So I am going to stop sharing the screen so that we can see everybody a little bit better. And I think, Max, you're going to maybe start the conversation with our panelists.
Yeah. So we'll kind of start with one question. Laura and I will kind of go through them and allow our experts to kind of share their insight. And so we'll be monitoring the chat. If there are any questions, we may pause and kind of bring those in. But Katie and Kelly. So, okay, the first one is all about organization. And I think if you're a district or a school assessment coordinator, that's probably a love language so that you can get through testing season. But would love for you to kind of share your experience in collecting the information you need and how you might handle changes as they come up throughout the year.
I'm looking for Katie to go first. I'm still disorganized over here.
I'll chime in. I'm going to talk specifically through the lens of accommodations, if you don't mind, Max, because
yeah, go for it.
Really, I think everyone in testing would agree that accommodations, managing and implementing them is such a big part of the work that we do. And honestly, a big reason why we partner with TestTown. So for my district, developing a strong accommodations process as early as possible before you're even into the next school year is really important. And for us, that has required building a really strong partnership with between our assessment team and our special program leaders across the district. And that partnership includes a shared vision for how we are going to manage accommodation and eligibility decisions. We have in our district, we've developed a standing meeting structure. We meet once a month to touch base. And we've also established a clear process and a series of deadlines for documenting committee decisions and eligibility, ensuring that the work is manageable for all of our stakeholders, CTEs, committee leads. We call our process the collaboration for assessment decisions, and it includes roles and responsibilities as well as training and deadlines for solidifying our decisions. So that is one key aspect of the organization that goes into testing that we start on and build upon really early in the year.
I was trying to have a problem with some interference. So if that's still going on, let me know. My devices are not behaving normally today. I blame it on the fact that this is a TestTown webinar and I just have a new kitten in my house today. So that's my rationale. I concur with Katie. I was taking the same angle on accommodations. And I would only add to what Katie said to say that one of the very first things I teach my campus testing coordinators to use is the master accommodations report. I tell them a lot of the reports we're going to learn about as the year goes on, but specifically in test towns, let's look at the master accommodations report. Let's understand all the fields on it and which fields you need, some fields you don't need as often. And so I make sure that my campus coordinators are using that year round.
Okay, and so I'm going to jump into communication and campus communication, and honestly, accommodations and communication, those two are very closely aligned. And so that was kind of specific to accommodations, but sharing timelines and updates with your campus coordinators to make sure things get done. How do you keep communication consistent across different experience levels? Let's maybe start there, and then even though we don't always like to talk about things that didn't work as we expected, I think we learn a lot from sometimes when something didn't work out, how to pivot and change. So that was kind of a lot of prefacing of however you want to share about simplifying campus communication. And Kelly, if you're okay with going first, that way you can go ahead and talk, and then we'll mute you.
Okay. I think I'm a little more organized now talking to you on a tiny, tiny screen. Um, one of the things I learned years ago when I was a campus testing coordinator was that my staff relied on a telepass calendar that I used to make. And so that has lived with me. One of my friends made a comment about how much I like to create calendars, and that still stands true today. But I create a key dates document for every administration, and I share that a couple months before the administration with principals, assistant principals, anybody can have it. And I modify it as we go, I update it. But the most recent thing I added to my key dates is when you need to make a plan for your homebound students. How are they going to participate? Because that was something that was falling by the wayside for us. So I rely on the key dates document, and then I send one email to my campus coordinators, and almost always only one email. Some of them are on this call right now, so they might say I'm lying, but I try to send them one email a week with all the information they need, news, updates, and at the very bottom of my email, some of them are on the call. They'll tell you this is true. The last section is just a test town section. And in that section of that weekly email, I include the is it Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday tune-ups, and any other live trainings y'all have available are in my email every week to my campus coordinators. Um, those are my responses to your questions, Laura.
So thinking about just big approaches to communication in Humble ISD, we really prioritize supporting our CTCs and leaders by providing consistent resources and then clear, repeatable steps, especially for each test administration. So for example, many of our trainings that we deliver to CTCs and others follow a similar cadence when we can provide that. So that creates a predictable structure to help build confidence and clarity, especially for our CTCs that serve multiple administrations. When we are highlighting, for example, steps that need to be taken in our testing systems, that includes TestHound as well as Cambium. Again, we reiterate the repeatable processes that they are going to follow in those systems, administration after administration. We also publish, to Kelly's point, trying to minimize emails, we publish a weekly newsletter that outlines tasks and reminders in greater detail that can really be covered in our trainings. And so the CTCs receive this once a week communication on the same day at the same time every week, allowing them to plan ahead and take action. And beyond that newsletter, we rarely send additional emails unless there's an item of business that needs its own attention. We model how to use key systems as well, such as TestDown and Cambium, through consistent and step-by-step approaches. This helps our CTCs recognize patterns, establish a rhythm for their work. My teammates, Julie Thomas and Cindy Stowe in my office, have worked really hard to create and maintain our own internal manuals, if you will, or how-to documents to support the work that we do in our testing systems. Because just like accommodations, work in the systems is one big piece of the work that we do in testing. So those are a few examples of how we strive to provide some really clear and consistent, repeatable communication throughout the year.
I am just curious, just because time's changing and again, different experience levels and different, I'm getting on the older side of myself, of my age group, and like younger people. Like, has there been something that hasn't worked that you think communication wise has approached, whether you're new or old or, young or my age? I'm just curious.
I'll chime
I
in by saying a lesson that I've learned working in large districts is that it's typically common to not have 100% success on every task and deadline, right? But it's not always the communication failure. Instead, we try to think through the work through a couple of questions. Did our processes and communication lead to success for the vast majority? And if an issue did arise, were we able to address it before it really impacted students? And if we can answer yes to both of those things, then typically we feel confident in our system and structure. But we've also learned for those times that we can't say yes to those questions, that really a one-size-fits-all training or support document is not always the best, especially again across a large district. So we've been most effective in addressing issues by one-on-one customer service, tailoring communication and support to meet the needs of that individual CTC or campus, through individual meetings before, during, and after testing campus visits. And that has largely helped address any issues that have arisen from failed communication.
I concur with Katie. I like her 2 questions that she asked. I'm going to write those down. I would also say that no method is perfect, right? And putting yourself back in the shoes of those campus administrators, their work is so robust and varied that if you think this work is their priority, you may be wrong in a lot of cases. I ask them to make this work their priority on certain days of the week that we have events scheduled, but every other day of the week, there are other priorities. They're chasing kids around parking lots and, running all the drills and doing so many other things in classrooms. And so I try to remember that this is not the most important thing they do. It's really important on scheduled test days, and the rest of the time, it's not their priority for the most part.
I love that. And I think everything that you both shared so far really kind of lends itself to this next question. So you've talked about organization and communication. I think anyone will agree those are key details. And Laura and I can probably both say this from having been in your seats back in the day, that all the planning in the world, there's sometimes some things that pop up at that last minute. And so I think it'd be great if you guys would take a moment just to share maybe what some of those issues are, and then I think how you handle them, because things are going to happen, but how those are managed and approached really kind of dictate what happens.
I have strong feelings here, Max, because on some of the notes you gave us, it says reduce last minute scrambling. I don't call it scrambling. I call it adjusting.
I like that.
And I think that's what we're here for. I ask my campus coordinators to be prepared at least a week or 2 ahead of time and know that in those last 2 weeks, things are going to come up, and just know that that is the work. And so we don't admonish our ARDs for making last minute decisions, because that's important work that they're doing. We know that TELPAS decisions need to be made as close to the test as possible. So that's important work. So be prepared for those things and make that your work of those days. Students are going to continue to enroll. What is the process for that? It's not a problem. It's not scrambling. It's our work. Our doors are open. We don't get to close our doors. So I asked them to have plans for that. The one thing that I continue to find myself scrambling with are Star Alt 2 materials. Our processes in our district are currently imperfect, and we are continuing to improve that. I'm I'm continuing to ask Education Advance to give us an order form in Test Town where my campus coordinators could go in and order materials for a student that didn't originally have materials or that was new or for some reason. I need a better system for ordering. Google Forms are great, but it is causing me a lot extra effort at this time. I would only add one more thing. I would add two more things. One thing that I think we scramble with sometimes are kids who have significant needs, and especially when they have an accommodation that requires TEA approval. I've had great success for the past 2 years of asking my campuses to have this turned into me in January. We have a work session where they can come in, they can get help. I invite somebody from special ed. Whoever we need to invite can come and attend and help us write those requests in January. That has really turned things around for us. And then the last thought I have about the last minute adjusting, not scrambling, adjusting, is that I try to assume when things don't go right that it's my fault. So I don't assume that the software isn't working. I don't assume that the contractor didn't do their job. I don't assume that TEA dropped the ball. I try to assume that I did something wrong and what can I do to fix it. 95% of the time I can find a solution that doesn't require panicking. It doesn't require, losing my mind over something. But there's almost always something I can do to fix the problem. So, and that makes me feel like it's not in somebody else's hands, like I have the control and power. So that helps me with some of those things that come up last minute or unexpectedly.
I love those thoughts on reflection, as well as your positive outlook on scrambling, just pivoting instead of scrambling. Very similar to what Kelly shared. It's almost like we should expect the unexpected. So what are the unexpected or rare situations that may arise during testing? A few, just a very unexpected need for an accommodation, right? Whether it's a student served in a program that gets a very last minute change, or during the test administration change to accommodations, or a broken bone, a concussion. There's always severed, internet connectivity issues that have to be worked through and addressed. For us in Humble, a more common problem that we experienced this year is a CTC or a co-CTC who may not be able to be present on testing dates or days leading up to testing. And so we have to think about roles and responsibilities. Our goal is to always have a CTC and a co-backup at every campus for every test administration. And so with that in mind, we require both our CTCs and our co-CTCs to attend trainings together. They all have shared access to our systems, and they're expected and responsible for doing the work in our systems. So in the event that one of them is out unexpectedly, there's somebody else already there with system access, system expertise, system readiness. And by system, I mean the larger testing system, but also our actual systems, Cambium and Test Town. When we know in advance that one of the two, the CTC or the co, may not be able to report to work because of something that they're going through, then we work with principals to identify a third person and train them up. And so it just goes back to, we should always expect the unexpected, brainstorm all the what ifs without going too crazy, right? And have a plan or a process in place for if that does happen, if that does arise.
Great. And y'all are making me today. We're never going to panic or scramble. Pivot is our word of the day, and we're going to all start using that in our daily lives, right? I'm going to start using that. Thank you, Kelly. So next section was talking about creating consistent processes, but as I'm listening to you all, I feel like we've kind of talked about how you did that this year. At this point in the year, May leading into June, which summer will fly by, leading into 26, 27, what are some things you're doing now to prep for next year, to get ready for next year so that it is as consistent as it was for you this year?
Sure. I think it's really important to, as much as possible, um, create highly repeatable processes from year to year, especially because we know that we changes in the air, right? And we have a changing assessment landscape coming up. So as much as we can repeat and provide consistency, yet refine and perfect based on reflection and experience. Um, but as much as we can provide consistency to our training, our platform management, our communication, and our test execution, the better. And much of that work happens in the summer. Summer's really, I don't feel like, is a downtime for testing professionals. It's the time to gear up, really the start of the new year, January. We're thinking about next year calendars, and we're thinking about training schedules, and we're thinking about our approach to training and our resources. And so again, just trying to intentionally model how we use our systems, for example, such as Testtown and Cambium. That really helps our CTCs recognize patterns and develop a clear rhythm for each administration. And we know that we've succeeded when our office hears phrases like, STAR wasn't so bad. I learned a lot through TELPAS, right? Or TELPAS wasn't really bad. I learned a lot through field testing. And so when they recognize the rhythm and the repetition, then we know that we have succeeded. So, but again, that work starts now. Looking at past reflections that we've applied to how did each training go? How did each test administration go? Let's act on those reflections. What worked well, what didn't. Let's act on those now in summertime as we gear up for the next school year.
I will piggyback on what Katie said. I think it's not a wash, rinse, and repeat, but it's a wash, rinse, upgrade, and repeat. Like, you're constantly reflecting, trying to improve those processes. I like to use my summertime to think about, well, I think about a couple things. I think about a lot of things, but our deputy superintendent likes to say clear is kind. Giving clear instructions is kind. It kind of rubs me the wrong way, to be honest. Many of you know I like to take the opposite perspective sometimes, a lot of times. Sometimes I think being unclear is kind. And by that, I mean giving people the flexibility to make the choices. I don't have to make all the choices. I can be clear, these are the decisions I've made, this is what we're going to do, but I try to look for opportunities for my campus coordinators to make their own decisions. Sometimes that makes them uncomfortable. I trust campus administrators. There are a lot of things I leave for them to decide. I'm not their supervisor, which I really appreciate. Someone else is their supervisor. But I give them the framework where they make things happen. They make the decisions that are right for their campus. I don't need to make all those decisions. I don't need to review supplemental aids. I know some people review supplemental aids and approve them. There's no such thing as an approved supplemental aid. I don't need to do that. I can train my people to do that. I can give them the resources to do that. So I'm constantly looking for things that I can turn over to them while still trying to pick up as much work for them as I can, maintaining the databases and things like that for them. I always spend some time in the summer looking for things I can delete. Which parts of our process do we not need? Why are we doing this? Just because we did it 10 years ago doesn't mean we still need to be doing it. So I'm constantly looking for things to delete, especially in the next year as we transition to new systems, new tests, new who knows what's coming at us. But what can I delete that is no longer serving a real purpose for us?
That's great. I'm going to put you both on the spot just real quick because these 30 minutes, it always goes by so fast. But biggest piece of advice for anyone on the call, whether you be a district test coordinator or even a campus test coordinator, what would you recommend that they do right now as far as best piece of advice?
One piece of advice I've kind of acquired from a lot of other people is export a lot of stuff this summer. Export and save it in a file and call it end of year. Export your students out of Cambium. Export your test attributes out of Cambium. Export your everything that's uploading into Testtown every night. Save a copy of that right now at the end of the school year and have all that, because some of those things are going to be useful at the beginning of next school year when all of the systems aren't necessarily up and running at the same time. That would be a little tip. So any files that are currently processing, I would save a copy of that for yourself, and I would export as much as I could out of Cambium and save that in case I can use it later.
I love that. I'm gonna add that to my calendar, Kelly. For me personally, having just a really strong, well-defined process takes the edge off of the work that we do. It helps create a sense of control and organization within me, and I believe the same is true for most of who we work with. And so we aim in our office in our district to operate from a place of trust in our systems rather than uncertainty or the what ifs that could lead to stress. And so working through that frame of developing those clear, solid processes, knowing that ultimately that level of confidence is going to trickle down to the students is definitely a guiding factor. And I'll say that a tip or a suggestion, a piece of advice to help inform our processes, we have a few methods for collecting feedback from our stakeholders, mainly our CTCs. We work with a few selected CTCs every year in a focus group. And in that focus group session, we pose certain topics and ask for their feedback. For example, what should we start that would support that process? What should we stop because it's not serving the process well? Or what should we continue? That feedback circle has given me and my team quite a bit of a lot of really good information in terms of refining and building better systems. So that would be a tip or a suggestion piece of advice, just building additional feedback systems within your stakeholder group.
Y'all are amazing. I'm always a little overwhelmed on these conversations. You know, we start with a topic and then I think we all learn from each other as panelists and talking the conversation. And then hopefully I'm seeing the feedback in the chat too of just some really good things happening. Max, I don't know, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
I think the only thing I was doing, I was going to post a link in the chat real quick to our previously recorded, what we call them educational sessions, webinars that we've done. Just we had some new users to test out. So it's a great way just to kind of get feedback and insight into it. But I think as far as kind of what we talked about today, I think what has impressed me is you both have built some really amazing systems in your district to support your staff, but also get feedback. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing and something that we try as well as.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Until next time.